Hello.
Yes, hello. Good morning, Dr. Roberto. We're just
Hello, good
waiting to
morning.
off at 10.
Sure, I will mute. I'm here.
Thank you. Dr. Mohammed, I think we should start.
Yes,
So
I'm here.
Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. And I would like to welcome you to the second day of our digital forum as a collaboration between Hamad bin Khalifa University and the Ministry of Transport and Communication, where we will be focusing on Qatar's SMEs and the opportunity to expand their knowledge and how to use the emerging technology and the latest technology into their digital transformation journey. I would like to welcome today Dr. Mohammed Abdallah, the Associate Professor from Hamad bin Khalifa University, where he will be covering the blockchain and the benefits for SMEs. And I would like to welcome as well Dr. Roberto, the professor from Hamad bin Khalifa University, where he will be talking about as well about blockchain applications and the use cases for SME business innovation. And I would like to welcome as well today Mr. Yazan As-Safi, the Digital Industry Director, who is supporting the digital transformation for the industry in Qatar. If I can start with Dr. Mohammed Abdallah, please, Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Rawan, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this very interesting forum. So thank you also for the attendees for coming and listening to this talk. So let me first share my screen.
طبعا Dr. Mohammed and our attendees, we will be receiving by the end of the session questions to Dr. Mohammed and his subject, and we will be accommodating and supporting with much information.
Sure. Okay, so thank you again. So let me start. So today we are going to talk about blockchain's applications for SME. So my name is Mohammed Abdallah, and I'm Associate Professor in the Information and Computing Technology Division at College of Science of Engineering at Hamad bin Khalifa University. And also in this talk, I will have my colleague, Dr. Nuruddin. He's going to present in the last part a demo on how blockchain can be used for applications for SME. So, okay, so the talk today will be divided into three parts. The first part will be giving an overview on blockchain. We know it's an emergent technology. You may have heard a lot about blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, but today we are going to give you like what does exactly blockchain means and what are the types of blockchain that can be very useful to SME. Then in part two, I'm going to go over blockchain applications for SME. And then in the last part, we are going to show you a demo of how to develop a decentralized application on blockchain from design to deployment. So this is my first part. So we'll give, as I said, an overview on blockchain. So when blockchain started, when was the beginning? Actually, the beginning, there was an economic crisis, global financial crisis in 2008, which actually hit the whole world. And there were actually, the main source of people believed at this time that the main source for this problem was actually the centralized ledger that been hosted by the banks. So all the transactions that been all the money or of the users or all the movement of the money is being handled by a centralized ledger, which is the bank, and people were not available to see. There was no kind of transparency about how this money has been used. So this centralized ledger was you can see it as a single point of failure. So there was an issue how to actually move from a centralized ledger to a distributed ledger. So this kind of, when people started losing trust in the bank, they were thinking about, can I have a distributed ledger where rather than having all the transaction being held in centralized unit, can it be held among distributed fashion so that all the users can really see what transaction can be handled, and it can be and this will somehow create more trust on how the money is being handled. So this was a very nice idea, but there was many issues about this idea. For example, how can I update this distributed ledger? How can I make sure that all the users, whenever there is any transaction between any two users, how can I make sure that this transaction is being stored in all the distributed copies of this ledger at all users, and there is also consistency? And also, how can I make sure that there is a trust among all these users, or that any update in this ledger, people will trust each other about the information stored in this ledger. So this actually, this issue of how to update the ledger, in 2008, there was this white paper like published by a person called Satoshi Nakamoto. He's actually a person who is very well known, but nobody knows his real identity. He created was Bitcoin. Okay, so this Bitcoin, okay, he was able to solve this trust problem of distributing the ledger, and he invented what's called blockchain. And this is the technology based on what Bitcoin was implemented. So the blockchain actually, it's a technology that provides rules on how to update this distributed ledger among all users and ensure consistency and also trust among the users. So if you think about blockchain, you may have heard a lot of terminologies on blockchain. You may heard about Bitcoin, consortium, data mining, too many aspects. But what exactly is blockchain? So the question is for example, blockchain is just only the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, or there's much more than that? Actually, if you look at the blockchain, blockchain is, as I said, it's a distributed ledger. If you think it's like a distributed database, okay, but it has two main features. The first important feature is a tamper-proof. So whenever data is stored in distributed ledger, it cannot be changed or modified after that. So people can trust that the data is really secure. And then the second part, that it's actually, there is this kind of consensus. So whenever any data is sent to this distributed ledger or stored, we are there is a consensus among all the users of this blockchain network that the data stored on all the distributed ledger are consistent and the same. So this blockchain was able to provide consistency and also trust. So the three together, this is actually our blockchain. So blockchain, as I said, distributed database system which can provide immutability, tamper-proof data, and also consistent in terms that all the data stored in this distributed database, they are all the same. So based on this technology, this is the real blockchain. Too many applications have been developed on this. The most famous ones are actually the Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrency that you are hearing about, Ethereum. Also, there was actually more application, decentralized app, which is the smart contract. And also there are peer-to-peer transaction trading and too many applications that actually today the SME can really benefit from this type of application. So to give you a more idea, so a blockchain, if you really want to work on a blockchain, you need to have a grasp of two technology. You need to have an understanding of technology. First of all, it has encryption, because all the trust that we build in the blockchain, you need some type of encryption, and also you need somehow an infrastructure of some public and private key. Plus, you need to also have a distributed computing, because blockchain will be actually a type of a computer nodes that they all have this distributed ledger stored on them. So both of them are combined. So with encryption and distributed computing, that's what you need to create a model where a network of computers can collaborate towards a shared and secured database. So now the question is, now we are going to say, okay, so blockchain, we said that it can be can provide this immutable data structure and also consensus. So now we are going to explain how we can achieve immutable data structure, how this blockchain doing this. And this is the main idea of the blockchain. So the blockchain, from the name of the blockchain, is actually, it's a set of blocks which are chained together. Okay, so how this is happening? Okay, so assume, for example, you are in a Bitcoin network and you received a set of transactions, okay, and you want to store them in the database. So this is the set of transactions that you received, okay. So now I want to store them in one block, okay. So how the block is formed? So assume that this is, for example, the first block, the first set of transactions that you received. So the first block, actually, there will be, each block will have a block ID, okay. And on top of that, we will have also a nonce. A nonce is a random number, which we're going to understand its importance later. So this block ID, how the block ID is formed? The block ID is actually the following function. It's an encryption function, okay? It's a kind of a security function we're going to explain later, which is actually a function. Its input is all the transactions ID here. So each of these transactions, for any payment transaction that happens, for example, in the Bitcoin, it has an ID. Plus this nonce. So the ID of this block will be actually a function of these transactions ID and nonce. So this is now I formed one block. Now I assume I have another set of transactions that I received. So now I started creating more blocks. So actually the blocks are created this way, okay? So every transaction which I receive, I will put them in one block and I will generate block ID. But now you can see here there is kind of chaining between this block. How this chaining is happening? So actually it's happening in this way. So for each block, we also input, in addition to the nonce, we input the previous block ID. So we take this block ID, the previous one, and we put it here. Now the new block ID for each of this block will be the encryption function, which will be function of the transaction ID plus the nonce plus the previous block ID. Okay, so if you think about it, any of these block IDs actually will be function not only of the previous block ID, but will also function of all the previous block IDs. So any ID here will have a kind of relation or a function of all the previous blocks ID. And so, as I said here, each block will include the IDs of all the previous ones. So actually, this kind of chaining through this encryption function actually will make it very, any modification for any of these blocks can be easily detected. And we're going to see how in the next slide. So the temper, first of all, let me define this encryption function. This encryption function is a very popular function. It's called hash function, which actually the main idea of the hash function, it can convert any input of any size into a fixed size string. So for example, if you get all the transactions, whatever the size of the transaction, you'll always get a fixed value, which is independent of the size of the transaction. It has two main features, okay? It's unique, which means that if you have different inputs, we will always produce different hash values. And it's also secure, which means it's impossible to determine the input from its hash value. So given this hash function, okay, so the blocks will look like this in the blockchain. You'll have this hash function, the output of the hash function, and this is how they look like. They will like binary number, all of them have the fixed size. So let's see now how this chaining, okay, will make it very easy to detect any kind of modification. For example, assume that one of the blocks here, the second block here, okay, someone tried to modify the value of the block here. So when you try to modify the value of the block here, the block ID will change, and then this will move to the next block, and then this will also change this block ID. Then here at this, when this block ID is actually computed, it will be different from the original one stored. So, and this will propagate through all the coming all the next blocks. So as you can see, there has been the chain has been broken. So I can easily detect whenever any change here, I can easily detect there was something problem with the blockchain and someone tried to modify the data. And also there is another feature, I can know exactly where is the block that had been modified. So for example, at this stage, when the block ID start to change, I can know that, for example, this block, the one that where the data has been modified. So as you can see, this creates this trust in this blockchain. The data stored there, it's trusted, secured, nobody can change. So now we solve the problem of the trust through the blockchain. Now the issue of the consensus, how can we make sure that all the users will have the same distributed ledger in all of their network nodes? So this is actually done by a consensus. Okay, so how does consensus work? So assume this is your network of this is your blockchain network, and actually you receive a multiple of transactions. Okay, and actually all the transaction when it's sent to the network, it all goes to all the nodes of the network. So they all receive the transaction, but they can be received not in the same order, so there can be some issues. So how can we make sure that at the end that all the nodes can receive, can have the same distributed ledger? So this is so how to solve this? Okay, and how to regulate the blockchain to create this consistency. So the idea here comes that we need to select a leader for updating the ledger. So among these networks, the way to do this, we're going to select one node. Okay, he is the leader, and this one node, he will be the one that creates the block. And then once he creates the block, it will be sent to all the nodes to add it to their own blockchain after verifying it. Okay. So another question, how can I select the leader? And actually, this is leader issue, how to select the leader. This is the most popular mining technique that we all heard maybe about Bitcoin and why it's taking minus process. So how you're going to see why mining or this how it relates to consensus algorithm. So actually to select the user, okay, we do a race-based election mechanism. There should be some race, okay, that the user will go and try to compete with each other to find to select to be the leader, okay. So the way it is done in the Bitcoin, for example, it's actually by solving a puzzle, okay, which we called a proof of work. A proof of work means that all the users needs to do some work to prove that they can be selected as a leader. So how the puzzle is designed? The puzzle is designed in this way, okay. There is this target value which is determined, okay, and each node needs to solve the following. So they have this hash function which we defined before, which is a function of the previous block ID and the transaction ID plus this nonce. So actually all the nodes, they are trying to find this value of nonce, okay, which makes sure that will satisfy this target, okay. And this actually in a very exhaustive process technique, which actually is done in this way. It's just like you go and search for this nonce, keep searching. So until you find the value of the nonce that satisfies this target. So this is a very simple code that's doing it. Actually, if you look at this process, it's actually a very highly competition process. And actually it can go to 1000 terahertz per second. It consumes electricity and time consuming and cost. But the question why, and this process is called mining, but the question why we are doing this, actually the purpose of doing this is to make sure that to not make it easy, for example, let's look at a model. If this is what a very simple way to select the leader, then for example, an attacker can go to the network and he can easily claim to be a leader with a very simple work, and then he can really create blocks which are not trusted. But now with this kind of a proof of work technique, now a person who really wants to go and attack the network, he needs to spend a lot of money and effort in order to do it. So it makes it very difficult for an attacker to modify the network. And also this process of mining to incentivize people to do it, actually, whenever a person is selected as a leader, they are rewarded a Bitcoin. Okay, that's why a lot of people try to join Bitcoin network, is to try to solve this puzzle. And if they have been selected, they will be given a Bitcoin, which now they are a good investment. So as I said, it's make it very hard for the attacker to alter a transaction within the block. So now this is like a general idea how the blockchain works. And what I mentioned, so let's look at the blockchain timeline, how the blockchain evolved with time. So the blockchain in 2008, was a white paper that we said about blockchain. And then Bitcoin started to show up, okay? And was mainly a distributed database system. And then in 2013, became blockchain 2.0, which is based on Ethereum smart contract, okay? Which is actually the idea of the smart contract came into the picture. And I think this is what's mainly very important. And we see this is very useful for the SMEs. And then they started the first deployment 2015, decentralized apps and project. And then recently, 2019, they started doing blockchain 3.0, which actually trying to solve one problem with the blockchain, which is scalability, which we're going to explain in a few seconds. And as I said, this from 2013 to 2010, now it's really based on distributed computing. So what is the blockchain 2.0? So there was this guy, Veltag Buterin, which he actually talked about developing Ethereum, which actually he thought about, rather than having only a distributed database, what if you can develop actually a decentralized application on top of the blockchain? So on each node, rather than have only a database, you're going to have a computer, a virtual machine, which can run a specific applications. And these nodes will collect together and they can form a consensus on how to run a smart contract. So what is the smart contract? So the smart contract is actually a kind of a business logic. For example, if you have a contract really, which is happening in a real SMEs, you can convert it to be running on the blockchain, which is a set of business logic, which can include also signature of the stakeholders, the rules of the contracts, even some regulation regarding the contract, and they can be stored over the blockchain, and then they can be executed. And this has been seen too many, like it has really many applications in finances, in health, in trading, as we are going to see later. Also, we need to mention there are two types of blockchain. There is a public blockchain and private blockchain. So the public blockchain is actually, it's mainly like the Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's open for public participation. It's publicly audited. For example, you can go to the Bitcoin network and actually you can download the whole blockchain and see what's going on now. And it has two different, usually the consensus algorithm. There are this proof of work, which we explained. There is another one called the proof of stake, which are different consensus algorithm to select the leader. But usually they have a poor throughput, but because they are public. Now there is also a type of blockchain, which are private blockchain. Sometimes they call permission, consortium blockchain. They are all under the umbrella of private networks. Only authorized parties can join this blockchain. It's mainly, for example, if you are developing and if you have a blockchain with different SMEs working together, they can form a blockchain to facilitate working together, but this will be only private. It can be closed or open for public to read, and it has different types of consensus algorithm, proof of authority, Byzantine, fault tolerance, which actually much less in terms of working, because now the parties know each other, so you don't need to spend a lot of effort to prove their trust, and they have good throughput. Example for these networks like Hyperledger and Quorum. But the problem with the blockchain, it has some limitations. Okay, it make it very network safe, but does not scale well. Okay, so for example, in a centralized system, when you increase the computing nodes in a centralized system, you can do more transactions. However, in a blockchain, the problem that when you increase the network size, you mean add distributed nodes, actually, you can really achieve higher security because more nodes, when they are involved in blockchain, they can provide you more security. But the problem that these nodes need to connect to each other, they need to communicate to each other, so may end up having a higher communication overhead. So the scalability of blockchain was an issue really for the blockchain. So we have a constrained scalability. We have the limited number of transactions that can be done. For example, in Bitcoin, 7 transactions per second. Ethereum becomes a little bit better, 17 transactions per second. You can have a lot of latency, and sometimes you can have a lot of actually energy that we spend like with the proof of work. So how we can solve this? So blockchain 3.0 came with this addressing scalability. And actually they tried to think about it, and there was actually a trade-off between security and scalability. And for example, here in this case, now rather than saying if all the transaction, I can divide the blockchain into two things, on-chain and off-chain. So not all the transaction needs to be done in the blockchain. I can do some transaction on another channel. Okay, so for example, in this case, if these two users trust each other, okay, so they can actually, for example, on the blockchain, they can block a certain amount of money. Okay, and then they can go out of the blockchain, they can handle all the transaction among each other, and once they finalize this transaction, they can send it back to the blockchain. So this will reduce the effect of the load on the blockchain and make it more scalable. But at the other side, there is also a security issue because not all the transactions here are secured. So you need to select who are the users that will be going to the off-chain and how to really make sure that whatever they are doing is really secure. There are different types of this kind of scalable network. For example, the one that I mentioned, state channels, and there are two projects now working on that, is Lightning for Bitcoin and Radiant for Ethereum. There is this also sidechain, another type, which actually rather than having on-chain and off-chain, you can have two blockchain networks. You can divide the blockchain into different blockchain networks, and then they can connect to each other, so make them, and you know how to trust each other. There are projects like Plasma, proof of authority network, Liquid. Another types of blockchain, which actually scalability is called multi-chain, which actually deals with inter-blockchain connectivity. For example, if you have a Bitcoin blockchain, you have Ethereum, how they can connect with each other, how can they talk to each other. There are projects like Cosmos, Polkadot, OneChain. And lastly, there is also this sharding techniques, which actually, rather than having all the nodes having all the database, they work on the same data, all of them in certain database, we can actually divide the database into multiple shards, and they can be maintained by different nodes parallel to each other. And there are projects like RapidChain and Ethereum 2.2. So now I just give you an introduction to the blockchain. The next part, I'm going to give you a blockchain applications for the SMEs. So in action, I know that also you were going to give some introduction to this part, and also my colleague, Dr. Roberto, I think in his next talk, he will also provide much more applications related to this SMEs and how it benefits them. So if you think about it, the blockchain benefit for SMEs, we can see it has too many benefits. So just maybe 4 of them, which are very clear. First of all, it actually can do secured, fast, and cheap cross-border payments. So for example, you can expand your customers, because if you can enable SMEs to perform secure customer transaction without any intermediary involved. And for example, if you use Bitcoin, you can bring customers from outside the world. There is no issue. And actually the transaction, by the way, I just want to mention that the transactions are very fast and cheap compared, for example, to bank transactions. And also, you can also, employees can securely send, receive money across the world at cheap rates. So these kinds of, for example, you can even hire talents from outside, and you can provide them like their payments easily without any kind of issues through the blockchain. Second part, which is the cheap and secure cloud data storage. Yesterday, there was 2 nice forums about cloud computing, and one of the issues was raised. When you use cloud computing, you need to make sure that the data is secure. So actually, blockchain is actually one of the technologies that can be really very useful in providing secure cloud data storage. And there are many applications now, they will provide this kind of data storage based on blockchain. So rather than having all your data within a centralized place, you can actually use blockchain networks to provide this kind of cloud data storage. And also it allows SMEs to scale indefinitely while ensuring trust and safety at the same time. The second one, the smart contract, which is actually very important based on Ethereum. It allows SMEs to automate and speed up the traditional process by eliminating all the intermediaries. And finally, we have this trust. Usually when we have blockchain, this can generate or can gain the trust of your customer and expand their business. For example, if you can look at the smart contract, this is like, if you can see the comparison between a normal contract, smart contract. For a traditional contract, it can take, for example, 1 to 3 days to just execute a contract. With a smart contract, it just takes minutes because everything is done automatically on the blockchain. Manual remittance for the traditional contract, smart contract, automatic remittance, you can easily money be transferred directly to the customer. Escrow necessary, you don't need, sometimes you need guarantees, while for the smart contract, guarantees doesn't not need, it's transparent, everybody can check what's going on. It's expensive, while in smart contract it's much cheaper. Sometimes you need physical presence for wet signature. For smart contract, you can have only virtual present digital signal, as I said, because it's based on encryption, so all that it's very secure and trusted. And finally, sometimes you need lawyers. However, in smart contracts, you may not need lawyers because you can involve all your government regulations in your smart contract. So what are the potential applications? There are 3 potential applications, and I said Dr. Roberto will, I think, will expand more on this. So the first one is like supply chain management, very important application. So it actually, I think most of the SME, they have issues with the tracking products and tracking products between SMEs, how they share data. So we're going to see that with supply chain management, we're going to have very efficient collaboration. You can easily detect what's the problem with any of your product. You can easily track it because everything will be stored in the blockchain. Also, data and records sharing. If you have any governmental documents, any contracts between yourself and the customers, any data records, this can be stored on the blockchain and can be easily used. And finally, we have this peer-to-peer electronic trading, where all the payments can be done very quickly through the blockchain. So to give you like an idea, for example, for the blockchain supply management for SMEs, so usually the SMEs, they don't have enough resources to track their supplies. It's a big issue to be able to survive in a competitive company. For example, here you can easily, I'll give you an example. For example, if you want to track a food product, for example, or any product that's coming from, you're exporting from outside, usually you don't have any clear information on how to know how the product has been through from starting from the point of origin until it comes back. Now, if you can connect all the stakeholders in this blockchain, okay, so easily you can, whenever any transaction happens is sorted from the origin, it will be stored in the blockchain and you'll have an access to the blockchain. So everybody will access the blockchain and will be able to put this information there. So we'll have this single point of truth and transparency, and will be trusted. For example, if a product has been stored for example, if the product, for example, if there is an issue in the product with the storage, for example, you can determine when was this happening, at which level through the supply chain management this error had happened, and actually this information cannot be changed. So it can provide secure, cost-effective platform, facilitate inventory management, manage external supplies, also manage multiple payments, and ensure high-quality, seamless service for customer. Another one, which is like how to do, like, for example, smart reports sharing for SMEs. So usually they have, like most of the SMEs, they have secure certificate and official document sharing. So they need to, a lot of the time, you need to authenticate or exchange authenticate documents between them and with the government. And sometimes this is a very tedious process. You need, for example, to create the document, go through printing, signage. Also, you need to protect them, secure them. And finally, you need to authenticate them and make sure that sometimes you need to go through different agency, takes time, and sometimes you need to fly even in order to authenticate the. However, for blockchain, it will be very easy. For example, if you have this person, he wants to, for example, to generate a certificate from this entity. So all he knows, he was going to request a certificate like this. And then this entity will create this digital certificate. And then it will store it in the blockchain. So how they will store it? They will take the digital certificate, they will hash it, okay, and then they will sign it. This signature, this is a digital signature, okay, and then this will be stored in the blockchain, and then this information will be sent back to this user. So whenever, for example, another entity here, this user, he wants to, for example, to take this, to tell him that I have this certificate, all what he needs to do is just send him this certificate and the transaction ID stored in the blockchain. So this entity will find this transaction ID in the blockchain, and he will get the certificate, he will do the hash, and he will check the signature. So once he verifies this information, the hash and the signature, then they will be able to verify that this certificate is correct. And this can be done in a just few minutes. So this is a very simple and a very nice example also for smart report sharing. So now I have and also the blockchain can have also these timestamps for so any information, any transactions which is stored in the blockchain is timestamped, which actually can prove existence of a data at a certain point of time. So I just provided an introduction to blockchain and how can some application that can be used for the SME. Now I will go to the third part. My colleague, Dr. Noureddin, who will give you a demo of how to really implement blockchain, decentralized apps on blockchain. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm good.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, so in the this last part of the presentation, we will be discovering how to design and deploy a decentralized application or blockchain-based application. So first of all, in the traditional web application or mobile application, so generally this application rely on a single or a centralized server to manage the business logic or to host the business logic of the applications. If you look, for example, to Twitter's, Gmail, Facebook, Uber's, all of these applications are centralized or hosted on a single server. This kind of architecture has some security drawback. Mainly, it is vulnerable to censorship, it has some privacy concerns, and also vulnerable to denial of services attacks. In the other hand, blockchain architecture is completely different. Instead of having a single server to host all the business logic of the application, now we have a distributed set of servers that are connected and communicate with each other in a secure manner using a blockchain protocol, and also are governed through a smart contract that define all the business logic of the application. Nowadays, we have plenty of decentralized applications that use this concept. For instance, application for distributed cloud storage, distributed computing platform like Column, distributed or peer-to-peer communication and messaging systems, like Status, Jammies, decentralized peer-to-peer open market for digital asset and so on. So let's now focus on specific application that can be useful for SMEs and see how we can define a decentralized application for these services. So if you consider leasing service for SMEs, the traditional way we do leasing is generally based on hard documentation to prove the evidence of transaction. And this is time consuming and expensive. Also, this is such kind of system, it's difficult to guarantees or provide guarantees about fairness and transparency of the system. However, when moving to a decentralized system using smart contracts, so this will be automatically provide more transparency, more fairness, and cost optimization. And also more importantly, it will build trust among the different stakeholders of the systems. So if you try to define the workflow of this application, so initially we have leasers that have service that you want to lease. So for instance, if you consider concrete mixer truck service, so this service needs to be first registered to the blockchain. And whenever new lease is created, so we need to register all the information related to this lease into the blockchain. This information could include the name of the tenant, the transfer date, the service ID, and other informations. So some of this information can be public or viewed by other SMEs, so to ensure more transparency and provide more fairness. Same thing when new lease is created, so this will generate a new transaction or new recording to the blockchain and so on. So actually, in order to build this system, we need to have or use a set of tools that are essential to build this decentralized application. So basically, we need a programming language. Solidity is one of the famous object-oriented programming, mainly designed to write smart contract for Ethereum or Ethereum-type smart contracts. We need a kind of IDE. Remix is a browser-based IDE that allow you to compile, deploy a smart contract to an Ethereum network. It allow you also to manage your wallet, to create that host your Ethereum address or blockchain address that allow you to send a transaction to deploy, for instance, your smart contract. MetaMask is a web browser plugin. It is a very useful tool that allow you to manage a wallet, and also it acts like an intermediary between your the IDE, for instance, and a blockchain network. So it allows you to inject a new transaction to an actual blockchain. Web3.js is a collection of JavaScript library. If you want to develop a JavaScript-based web application, so in order to be able to connect or communicate with the blockchain to send data through your application, you need to use this useful JavaScript library that have all the functionalities to access to remote Ethereum network using either HTTP, IPS, or WebSocket. Infora is an API suite that provide direct access to a specific blockchain network. If you don't have a local network node, a blockchain node installed in your machine, you can refer to this Infora. Actually, if you look to MetaMask is using in the background using this Infora service in order to be able to access to a specific blockchain network. So this is the global architecture or the basic architecture of a DApp or decentralized application. So in the client side, we have your web application, for instance, that use Web3.js in order to be able to send transaction through JSON RPC to one of the intermediary. It can be either directly a local Ethereum node installed in your machine. So this is more secure and more decentralized. Or you can use one of the intermediary like MetaMask that itself use Infora Ethereum provider, or use directly Ethereum provider that allow you to connect with any specific Ethereum blockchain network. And at the beginning, you need to first design your smart contract using Solidity and Remix to deploy it. So this is an example of the actual smart contract code developed using Solidity language. So we need to define our smart contract. We give it a name. For example, here we have leasing tracking contract. So we need to also define all the data structure that will hold different information related to this smart contract. For example, here we need a data structure that hold the information related to the different equipment used for this service. The data structure for the different tenant available in the system, and also more importantly, the tracking information that will be saved in this data structure that will contain the equipment ID, the name of the ID of the tenant, the equipment owner, and the date when the lease has happened. So this is the data structure, and here we have the list. We can, from this data structure, create a list or array of equipment, tenants, and track. Solidity will give you also the possibility to define some rules or some condition, a way to define condition, how to access or to call a specific function in your system, that we call it modifier. So it is used to automatically check a condition prior the execution of the function in a more declarative way. For instance, here, this modifier allow you to define that only that specific function can be only executed if the caller is the owner of the equipment here. Okay, we'll see this in more details in the next slide. So here we have the three main functions of our smart contracts. So that consists mainly in creating new tenants. So the creation of new tenants. So from the client or from the user side, so it need to call. He called this function by sending a transaction that specify the name of the function with the different parameters of the function, including the name of the tenant, its blockchain address, and the type of the tenant. Same thing for the equipment, and same thing when creating a new lease. So note here that when creating a new lease, we need to call this modifier, which is only owner, which specify that only the owner of the specific equipment can call this function to create a new lease for this equipment. So this is the big picture of the decentralized application on the big picture of the smart contract that can be used, that can be defined for this services or for this application. Now let's see in action how we actually deploy this contract to an actual blockchain network and how to start interacting with this blockchain network. So allow me to share. Yes. So here we have, in this screen, we have our Remix, the IDE that allow you to compile and deploy smart contract. Here, actually, the complete code of the smart contract that we just saw, that we just defined. So the leasing contract, this is the different data structure. And here are the three main functions that we can call in order to create a new tenant or new equipment, and also to create a new lease. So in order to deploy this contract, we need here in the Solidity, we click this button, compile this contract. So this contract will be compiled, and now it is ready to be injected in a specific blockchain network. Here we can use our second tool, which is MetaMask. Here MetaMask actually give you, so it is connected to a specific blockchain network, and he is also managing your account. So here I have an account with this address. Actually, I'm connecting to the main Ethereum network. Actually, I don't have any balance on this main Ethereum network, so we cannot really send any transaction to this main Ethereum network, but I can collect to a test Ethereum network, and we have a list of 4 test network for Ethereum, so we can choose any of them. So for instance, Coven, I have some balance in this test network Coven. Actually, this balance or the value of this Ether actually doesn't really has any value because it is just used for testing and for development purpose. So now also I'm connected to this network using my account. So automatically Remix will recognize that I'm connecting to this network and recognize the account that I'm using to connect to this network. So now I can directly deploy my contract by clicking to this button. So once I click, so Remix MetaMask will ask permission to actually really perform this transaction, because this transaction will has some cost, so it needs my confirmation. So once I confirm, so this will be sending a new transaction to a blockchain to the Coven network. So this will take a few seconds, and once it's deployed, so we will receive a notification that my transaction have been deployed. Yeah, so actually here I can see my transaction that has been, my contract that has been deployed, and this is the address, the actual address of my contract. So I can check actually this in the network, the actual explorer of the Coven network. So I can search for my contract. So actually it gives me the details information about my contract. It has been deployed 42 seconds ago and using from my account. So this is the actual information regarding my contract. So now once I created my contract and it is deployed in actual network, so I can access or I can call any of the three functions by sending a new transaction. So for instance, let's create a new tenant, for example, my name, and give it and specify my Ethereum address on my blockchain account, and then the type of the tenant, for example, I'm SMEs. So I will send a new transaction. So this again will ask me a confirmation. This is new transaction that has some cost. So I need to confirm first. So also confirm that this will create a new transaction into the blockchain to call this function. So actually in the actual blockchain network, this will actually execute the Ethereum node that has the virtual machine, as had been explained by Dr. Mohammed. So it has virtual machine. As the virtual machine will execute this transaction, which means that it will call this function. Yeah. So yeah. So here we can check. For instance, we can check the information about my tenant. So this will send transaction to the blockchain and retrieve all the information about the first tenant. So again, I can do the same. I can do the same thing when I create new equipment, create a new lease, and this all be translated to a transaction that will be sent to the blockchain and then executed by the virtual machine in the blockchain network. So this is a global picture of how blockchain work in the background. So I think we are almost on time. So thank you for your attention. The floor is yours, Dr. Mohammed.
Dr. Mohammed?
Yes, I cannot start my video. I'm not sure why. Say the host has stopped it. I'm here, Yani, but I cannot start my video.
Let me double check for you, Doctor.
Yes, it's working now. It's working. Sure. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Mohammed. Would you like to add anything? Because we would like to go ahead with the questions.
Yes, please go ahead with the questions. We'd like to listen to them.
Yalla, inshallah. So the first question we received is that, can we mine Bitcoin in Qatar?
No, it's illegal. The one that I meant, this is currently is illegal. But
illegal.
Yes.
And do you think, Dr. Mohammed, there will be studies regarding this to obtain approvals and acceptance to have it in Qatar, or there are no initiatives for this at the time being?
For the blockchain technology itself, yeah, definitely there have been a lot of interest in really employing blockchain. I'm aware there are like some companies here in Qatar, startups, like QChain and QPay, they started using blockchain. But they will not be used in terms of the Bitcoin. It will be mainly private blockchains that will be helping the SMEs. And there are, so we are aware that the blockchain is of high interest now in Qatar, and they are working even in developing some strategies and blueprints of how blockchain can be adopted in Qatar.
Yes, thank you so much. Dr. Mohammed, one more question. The application that we have discussed earlier, one of the audience is asking, can you specify if this application is for small businesses, as it seems it's only related to banks?
No, this is the application. I'm not sure which part he's talking about, but yeah, what I mentioned here, blockchain, it's not necessary to be done through payments, and banks are not involved. For the one that I mentioned for this supply chain management, there was no actually banks involved. There was no payment. Actually, it's all about really running all the transaction about different SMEs, maybe inside Qatar and outside Qatar, how they can look at the supply chain management and how they can track it. So there was no payment here regarding the banks were not involved. So blockchain is not only about payments. There are too many applications. Okay, any like the one that Ethereum, the smart contract that my colleague Dr. Noor mentioned. This is all about storing all this information on blockchain and can be easily tracked. There was no payment. If you want to add payment, there is also this. It's another application for Bitcoin, but for a blockchain. But there are too many applications what does not really involve with payment in blockchain.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. One more question that we have received.
Sure.
If there is an error in any of the blocks, how do you change the ID once there is a tamper of, or does the ID change on its own?
Yeah, whenever an ID is being detected, then this will be detected by the whole network, and this node will be removed from the network. Okay, so it will once it's so this can be easily detected, and the node will be removed.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you please give us some example of use cases for different domains, and also which blockchain technology is recognized globally?
Yes, so there are too many applications actually on this. And for example, this is, for example, in medical records, okay? And now I know that, for example, in Qatar, you know, like the medical records, now we have different places like Hamad Hospital, have a private hospital, have doctors, and all these medical records, for example, they are located in the different database. For example, the vaccination, which is going very well in Qatar now. Now imagine that you can, now if someone wants to get his vaccination record, he needs to go to, for example, to Hamad Hospital to get it, or download it online, and then he needs to present it by himself to another entity, for example, if he wants to travel through Qatar Airways. Imagine that all these entities, they are connected together through the blockchain, and this certificate of vaccination certificate is stored there. So it's easy, like for example, if you want to travel, then for example, Qatar Airways can access the blockchain, can really know that you have been vaccinated. So it facilitates a lot of medical record sharing between different entities. And also there is also this in the fintech, there are a lot of application, and actually if you can listen to Dr. Roberto in the next presentation, I'm pretty sure he will give you a lot of applications on fintech. There is also in the energy trading, okay. Also there is a lot of issues with the rewarding functions. There are a lot of applications with the rewarding functions. Actually, we even developed something here in HQ called Mukafa, which is actually based on trying to provide people with incentive to do more activities, and they will be rewarded. And these rewards are all done in blockchain. So there are too many applications. Anything you can think about, the blockchain can be really very useful. And actually, we have in our emails, we can really provide you like a text or a document about all these applications, and will be very I mean, we can really discuss with the collaborator, answer any question from the attendees, just like share with them our emails, and we'll be so happy to answer them.
So Dr. Mohammed, if you can just put on the screen your emails for the attendees just to grab it. And we have one last question.
Okay.
In Qatar, blockchain transactions are legal. Are they legal? And can we make payments in blockchain currency?
So Qatar, so as I said, the Bitcoin, the issue of the the Bitcoins is like, it's not legal, but there are many other applications which is kind of legal. You can implement blockchain. We do sometimes blockchain here, but in terms of Bitcoin itself, okay, it's currently illegal in Qatar. So don't do mining. You cannot do mining in Qatar. So for this specific application, it's illegal. But if you want to implement a blockchain for your own, application, that's completely fine if it does not include payment. And also, I know that now there is an effort to regulate also even how to do cryptocurrencies inside Qatar, but this will be mainly governed by the Qatar Central Bank. It will not be through the Bitcoin. Let me share my. So this is my email. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is my email.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed.
Okay. This. Okay.
Dr. Mohammed Abdallah, Associate Professor from Hamad bin Khalifa University. Dr. Nuruddin, thank you so much for this beneficial session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now we would like to move to our last session for the day. Dr. Roberto, who will be covering the blockchain and will be sharing more information with our audience. Dr. Roberto.
Hello.
Yes. Hello,
Good
Dr.
morning.
Roberto, how are you today?
Good morning, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yes. Okay. Seems everything is fine. So let me share the presentation. 1 second. I have an issue with my file. That's quite normal.
Of course.
Please be with me like a few seconds.
No worries. Take your time, Dr. Roberto. Just until your files are ready to be shared with the attendees, I would like to remind our attendees as well again today that the Digital Transformation of SMEs is running daily webinars to educate the SMEs on the importance of the digital transformation, what opportunities and benefits and packages can we offer the SMEs to support their journey in the digital transformation. We collaborate and partner with big technology and service providers within Qatar and worldwide, where we'll be educating the SMEs on a daily basis on the services that the DTSME is offering for the time being, which covers e-commerce, web presence, and cloud services. So please, if you can visit our website, mot.gov.qa, you can find more information related to the webinars that we are covering, details, how to register, logistics, timing, dates, and covering the details of each webinar. You can choose which is beneficial for your company, register and attend. So Dr. Roberto, we can see your screen for the time being.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And the mic is
presentation mode. Yeah, thank you very much. So I would like to thank all the attendees because this is quite an interesting exercise for us to discuss about fintech and blockchain, because at the HBKU College of Science and Engineering, we also have active research on both fintech and blockchain. In particular on fintech, I have a national research priority program ongoing, and blockchain, as Dr. Mohammed said, is quite an active field of research. So one slide about me, I should understand something about what I'm telling for a very simple reason. I'm directing a laboratory here, which is cybersecurity research and innovation laboratory. we aim to achieve impact and to generate innovation. So we are producing also a few patents exactly on these topics, like blockchain as well. I'm a full professor at HBKU CSC, leading the Cybersecurity Research and Innovation Lab. In the past, I was a global head for cybersecurity research at Nokia Bell Labs, conducting research with 3 departments that were depending on me. I founded a startup that was successfully exited in 2015. I've been a consultant for the United Nations on many topics regarding cybersecurity. I was also involved in governmental activities. As for my education, I have a PhD in computer science. I got 2 years post-master studies in operational research and strategic decisions, basically economics and management. Master of Science in computer science, professional certifications in the field. People in the field can recognize those quite well. So let's move to the real meat of this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberto. But please, if you can expand the presentation and go to presentation mode, because it's a little bit not clear for the audience.
It is presentation mode.
Because we can see the next slides on the side.
Yeah, okay. So let me see.
Thank you so much.
Let me stop share. Sharing. Is it better?
Yes.
No, you see the slide here. Okay, so let's stay. Probably let's stay in this mode.
If you can, Dr. Roberto, just press F5.
It doesn't work here. I will go on presentation.
Just F5, Dr. Roberto.
I did. F5 gives a different message, does not show the is Microsoft Teams notification if I press F5. So I know how it should work. Let's see. Home. Slash show, yeah. Current slide. Is it fine?
Okay, yes. Okay, Dr. Roberto.
That's the presentation mode. Okay, so let's go on. Sorry for this delay. So let's say, what is the agenda? So introduction, background, SMEs, typical challenges, fintech and blockchain, game changers for SMEs, which is the topic of this talk. Blockchain, we'll discuss some interesting use cases. So I hope that you would be able to bear with us because use cases are really tailored for the SMEs. And then we also show some real world solution, COTS solution that you can take and put at work in your organization or company. Or we also draw some conclusion at the end. So introduction, why fintech and blockchain? Actually, fintech, it's something to be in. There is a recent research survey that shows that fintech has a market value of 5 trillion, so 5,000 and plus million US dollars in 2019, and over 2025 is going to expect it to grow about 25% per year over year. So it's extremely big growth. And why this is the case for fintech? Well, because fintech can improve and automate the delivery and use of financial services. In a few words, in order to be understood by all the audience, basically what fintech aims at doing is basically to remove the middleman. So let's say the broker of financial services today is typically a bank, is a trusted third party. That activity is rewarded with a fee. With the fintech, the middleman, so the trusted party, is basically not there anymore. So this is exciting because this means a reduction in cost. Where fintech is going to produce this type of big gains? Well, because there are specific, of course, softwares that deal with what fintech can do. And in particular, we're talking about financial risk management software, financial fraud detection software, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and this is like in a strict relationship with the previous talk, crowdfunding platform, robo-advising, and stock trading applications. Probably some of you have touched some of those, but we will see also that there are other topics which are quite relevant for SMEs. For instance, supply chain funding and fraud detection is something that is also very interesting and solved with decentralized application. So why SMEs are important? Basically because they are 98% of the private companies in Qatar are SMEs. They are the backbones of the national economy, and this is true not only for Qatar, but it's worldwide. And this is very critical for social development. Without a very healthy SMEs ecosystem, it's very difficult that the society itself is healthy, because the SMEs are basically the trade union, the link between people, innovation, big company, and solutions at scale. So without SMEs, there would be basically no progress. So SMEs typical challenges, it's exciting to be like the leader CEO of an SME, but it's also a nightmare in a sense, because the challenges are multidimensional. You have to embrace technology. And I would like to just point out that this is particularly true in this period. COVID has pushed all companies to have a remote presence, to be online. Basically, in 1 week, we moved from normal life to an online life. And the same is true for companies. I mean, with prohibition in some countries to go to work, companies had to arrange themselves in order to be online. So embracing technology is not a choice. It's basically the only way for companies to survive. This has been shown in COVID for telepresence, for remote work or smart work. But this is also true in terms of embracing new technologies for making business in a different manner. If you're not able to do business in a different manner, you're going to get out of business pretty soon. So put this in your internal roadmap. Attracting new customers, well, yeah, sure, because as an SME, you need to thrive, and in order to thrive, you need to expand your business revenues. There is only one way, basically, is to find out new customers or to do cross-selling among the customers and the product you have. One thing where SMEs, unfortunately, are very penalized with respect to big companies is in financing. Financing is a nightmare because sometimes you need to have anticipated cash in order to produce the product you've been requested, and access to finance is always a nightmare for every company, not only in Qatar, it's typically worldwide, for a very simple reason that it is said that banks lend money just to people that basically do not need it. If you are an SME, you need to have money to produce something. You need to discount probably your invoice. It's a common technique, but not only that, you need to somehow be able to get money from the small market, and the small market do typically have higher fees. So financing your activities is always a problem. And this is where blockchain can help you. Increasing revenue, of course, this is very important. One way to increase revenue, it's reduce the inefficiencies in your processes, okay? And many processes that we run nowadays, think about all the paperwork-based process, are highly inefficient. So increasing revenue can also be achieved through decreasing costs, so enhancing the efficiency of the processes of your company. And then another point where you have typically a challenge, it's no surprise, is in processing payments. Think about, okay, you deliver the product, you have like a promise of payment in like 60 days, and then you have to process this payment. There is a delay, and you have to explain to the bank that there is a delay, and then you have to go to the bank and discuss how the loan will be repaid later on, what are the new fees that you have to pay to the bank. On the other hand, you have to push pressure on your client in order for him or her to pay, and so forth and so on. So processing payments is, again, very inefficient because typically it's dealt in person, requires a lot of middlemen, and it transfers costs, indirect costs, to the company itself. Blockchain can solve this. Okay, we will see how actually. Now, fintech and blockchain are game changers for SMEs. Blockchain has the potential to offer enough benefits for the development of SMEs. Well, basically, blockchain can provide SMEs with a few key features that basically will improve your business overall, which is trust, speed, security, and protection against identity fraud. This is the very basic. You will see that there are many more. As Dr. Mohammed said before, and Dr. Nuruddin complemented, it's basically if I can cite about Bitcoin, the anthem of Bitcoin is in numbers we trust. So the trust in blockchain is basically not relied to any TTP, trusted third party that says, well, you can trust us because we are established. We are here since a long time. We have a lot of money. No, you basically trust the mathematics, which is behind the blockchain. And mathematics is a universal language. Everyone can prove or disprove things. So it's a real trust. Speed, how long does it take a transaction? Again, just for ease of reference, even if it's illegal in Qatar, of course. For instance, Bitcoin authorizes transaction in a matter of minutes. So in 10 minutes, you could have a money transfer of whatever amount you want committed in just 10 minutes, which is relatively difficult to have through a trusted third party. We all know about the delays of days when you do international money transfers. Trust is there, speed is there. Security, as I said before, in numbers we trust, means that the security is for everyone to get proved. It's not security through obscurity, it's not security through trust. It's basically security because of the algorithms that is there, can be basically trust. Protection against identity fraud is a sub-property that comes for free when you use distributed identities. We will talk later on. There are many more.
Dr. Roberto, we're just receiving some comments. If you can enlarge the slides, please.
Yeah, sure, I'll try. Yeah, but
or if you can press on the 3 dots and select hide presenter view. Can you see the 3 dots, Dr. Roberto, below?
Yeah, I'm here. Hide. What?
Presenters.
Yeah, I see. I don't have the presenter view in the 3 dots. I would like you to take a picture, but I mean, I can see it relatively well. Is it okay now?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Roberto.
Yeah. Let me know if there's something else I could do, but that's what I can see. I have another screen here. It looks like decent. So blockchain is also there to solve what? The cash flow problem. And I believe everyone in SMEs is interested in this. The paperwork issue, which is, again, is an inefficiency because it takes time. Time is money. Not only that, things can go wrong with paperwork, while with digital, it's much, much easier. And the blockchain also solves the problem to go global. Why? As I said before, because blockchain basically, as a technology, does not know boundaries, physical boundaries. Now, let's move to the next slide. As I say, game changers for SMEs, yes, funds availability. Let's talk about funds availability. As I said before, international payments can become a lot easier, and not only easier, can also become a lot cheaper, because remember, when you have an international transaction, the number of fees really adds up quite quickly. And not only that, timing also is an issue, because you can deliver a service in time, and as soon as you deliver a service, we will see later on that there are specific technologies, which is contract technologies, that as soon as the delivery is done, the funds are transferred. So this is very exciting a possibility for SMEs, because you reduce the amount of exposure towards the bank about the loan you received, if any, because we will see that there is also a way to really skip completely the loan part from banks. It's a more cost-efficient process. Of course, it's a digitalized process, so it takes it moves at the speed of light, basically. And taking again the example of Bitcoin, as I said before, it really takes a max of 10 minutes in order to validate a transaction. It can also be speeded up with other blockchain technologies that you can use. Think about Algorand, for instance. It's very efficient. So timing is becoming really marginal when it comes to processes that are put in the blockchain. And this, of course, reverberates in higher efficiencies. More secure transaction. Why? Well, because first of all, they can be automated. When there is automation, you remove what is technically called the systemic error that the process itself can convey. And is more secure transaction, data can be used in exchange in a very private way, strong algorithm for encryption, and so forth and so on. And it's a secure transaction not only because of the technical properties, but for instance, assuming that you're buying a load of, I don't know, fruits from India, and you want to eat delivers to Qatar. You wait for the cargo to arrive, and then you check the cargo, and then you see that something maybe is routed. Well, with the digitization and the usage of blockchain, you can also have online tracking of the goods. Think about this. So the refrigerator checks the content, the value that comes from this analysis of data, like the cargo is routed or not, can be put in a blockchain, so is immutable in a sense, and you can know the state of your cargo, the content of your cargo, before inspection at a Hamad port. And this is very good, because if you know that one of those type of fruit that you are importing, like mango, it got routed during the transit, you can, with no further delay, order anyone. And so you can basically satisfy your customers in a very time efficient manner. Think about that. You know exactly the state of your goods. You can track goods. You can track the state of goods, which is something that basically you don't know now. You receive the cargo at the port. Someone there inspects the cargo, and so forth and so on. You can also exchange private information in a very secure manner, because you can add the layer of confidentiality and authenticity that you would like to achieve. And basically, this is also a very good property, because sometimes information that are leaked around, especially with regards to transaction, can also be very useful for your commercial opponent, let's say. Now, what are the typical use cases for blockchain-based applications when it comes to small and medium enterprises? In this part, as per the agenda, we'll discuss a few of them. Well, trade finance. Of course, this is one of the key points. Well, there are some studies that suggest that at this moment there is a gap between the trade finance needs of SMEs and what is actually provided, and the gap is around 1.5 trillion. So it's 1,500 billions of dollars. So basically, it's 10% of the overall business that is going around. This gap could be reduced by 500 billions in terms of trade finance using blockchain technology efficiently. So trade finance is one of the key elements of blockchain technology for SMEs. And remember, there are studies, it's not myself, there are studies who went through looking for them that support this. What's the meaning of that, basically? Well, is it possible to achieve very efficient trade finance? Because transparency and consensus mechanisms make trade finance much more efficient, okay? And this is basically exactly what blockchain have been meant for, to introduce transparency and efficiency. One use case, for instance, related to trade finance is supply chain, okay? Supply chain, it's somehow misunderstood in the sense that the supply chain, we focus on the latest steps of the supply chain. But supply chain, when it comes to physical product, goes to the very beginning of the generation of the product. Think about, I don't know, I have a chair in front of me. The chair is made of clothes plus iron. The supply chain includes the generation of the clothes plus the excavation of the iron in order to produce the chain. That's the real supply chain for the item. If you're an SME, of course, you are not full cycle. You just focus on a segment of that cycle. For that segment of the cycle, it's probably where you have problems because you are basically financing or pre-financing with trusted party like banks, just the last layers of the supply chain, while other layers which are deep inside are not financed. And you know very well that when something is underfinanced in a cycle, sooner or later, the inner cost of those underfinanced elements will reverberate on your final product. So you know that. And the question is, how can you take the full cycle into consideration? Well, basically with blockchain, because with blockchain, you are able to put the full cycle in the same context. You give access to that to your providers. Providers can also see where your supply chain is lagging. And every step of the supply chain can be put under control. Put under control means that, according to this use case, you can have clear understanding of the state of financing or underfinancing of this module supply chain. Okay. And this leads to what? Well, basically, this leads to another efficiency that you can gain. Think about just in time. If you have still a warehouse, think about faster invoice financing, of course, because the goods, you know exactly where they are, you know that they've been delivered, you know that they've been accepted, and so you can issue the invoice as soon as possible. And we'll see later on that it's also foreseeable and automatic payment without issuing an invoice. Faster transaction processing, of course, at the speed of light, which is electronics. Improve cash flow for suppliers, yes, because as soon as goods are delivered, they get paid automatically. And basically, you get better rates if you discount your invoice at a certain point, because you can also show the money lender, which typically is the bank or a third party, as we'll see later on. You can also show that you have the full control of your supply chain cycle. So there are basically very little chances that your product gets delayed. So, and this is quite exciting from the point of view of the SME, because you don't need to establish a trust relationship with your lenders, but basically the lender has simply to trust what is in the blockchain. And this basically reduces a lot the fees that the SMEs have to pay in order to access financing. Another use case for SMEs, which is quite standard, and is basically the holy grail, it's said, is the use of smart contracts. Okay, with smart contracts, what is a smart contract basically? A smart contract aims, the objective is to be exactly like any other contract that you are signed with third party, where there are penalties for not delivering, where are premium if you achieve some benchmark, like delivering 1 week in advance. But the main part of this smart contract, the excellent part, why it is the future, is basically its execution is automatic. So the two parties decide what to put in the contract. I want the cargo to reach Ahmad port in 3 weeks. If all 100% of goods are in good standing, I will pay this. If the cargo reaches in 2 weeks, you have a premium. If the cargo reaches with 1 week delay, you have a penalty. If part of the goods are routed, you have this other penalty, and so on and so on. When everything is there, and this is contract, which is a digitalized contract, the execution of this contract happens automatically. So as soon as the parties agree that something happened, the contract issues the billing, the contract transfers the money, and this is something incredibly fast and incredibly cheap. Why? Well, think about that. With this way of working, you are basically removing any intermediation, and removing intermediation has two main impacts. The first one is that it reduces cost of processing, and the second one, it reduces fees as well. So you can only have to gain something by this smart contract stuff. Smart contracts, probably you have heard about Ethereum, which is like a blockchain technology meant for enforcing smart contracts, but it's not the only one. There are also others like Polkadot, Cardano, the app builder, Confidel. It's a very rich ecosystem that just flourished, and you just need to choose exactly which technology you want to adopt. And basically this has to do with the size of your company, your IT function, and so far and so on. Another way that blockchain can help SMEs is for funding. As I said before, one of the major problems for SMEs is look for funding. I mean, finance in order to grow. Well, this is easy if you are like a very good, with a very good balance sheet. If you are like a normal company, which is exactly working for improving the balance sheet, that's much more difficult. And if it's difficult, this translates typically in higher fees that you have to pay for the funding to get received. So what blockchain is promising is to disintermediate this process. Disintermediation means that blockchain can put in direct contact people who owns or who want to lend the money with people that needs the money. If you think about the current model, which has been around for hundreds of years, is basically there is a middleman, which is the bank. The bank collects money from people that have money and lends for a fee, which is called interest, at least in Europe, to people that need money. So disintermediation is needed, because in this way you can have a process which is easier, cheaper, and faster. Not only that, you can also reduce a lot of paperwork. Think about going through smart contracts, commissions, and brokerage fees. So it's a win-win situation going for funding through blockchain. Another application of blockchain which I would like to discuss with you is basically identity management. Nowadays, and I refer to the last bullet point in this slide, there is one very dreadful attack if you're an SME, which is called BEC, which means business email compromise. And the attack goes very swiftly like this. Some external attacker takes control of an email address with whom you are in a relationship with, typically a client. And from this address, you will receive a series of email that first build trust. And then at a certain point, from that email address, can be internal or external to the company, there will be a request of funding transfer, okay, to an account which is not typically the one that you use, but the email will explain you that this is an emergency situation. Our cargo of mangoes is blocked in a port. Along the way, it has to be released, otherwise the goods get rotted. And it takes this amount of, like, I don't know, $40,000 to get the cargo released. Send this money to this account. Well, sometimes, and actually, unfortunately, many times, this type of phishing, I would call it, or a scam, is very successful. And there are damages in the order of millions per company and billions worldwide with this BEC. So remember, this business email compromise. This is a very serious problem nowadays, because companies, I mean, they're there to solve problems, okay? If you are the chief financial officer or the one that can sign, like the CEO even of a small company, and you receive an email from an account that more or less you trust, and it gives you a sense of urgency and the amount that has come, that's a fraud. The point is that with the blockchain, is it possible to have this identity management to be checked in real time? And when this identity management is checked in real time, this means that you're able to actually verify with no delay that the people that is making the claim is real, the people that you would like to talk to, and is not an imposter. Okay, so, and this is very important, because with one technology you solve a big issue. Not only that, you can also establish trust in a faster manner. Now, I suppose, and I discussed with you a few of the applications of blockchain to SMEs. And sometimes I said, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. But you're thinking, well, but I'm really a small or medium enterprise. I have some IT, but we really don't have the capacity to build a blockchain. We don't have the capacity to come up with a framework design and so forth and so on. This is very understandable. So I focused here on the last part, which is related to real world solutions. So solutions that do implement a blockchain, real blockchain, with all the pros of the blockchain in a way that you don't need to go from scratch. You can just use the segment of the blockchain that you really would like to use. The first solution is Loyal, which is an interesting solution. And think about that. As an SME, you are basically also having some sort of customer loyalty reward. Okay, you have customers. In order to retain customers, there are studies that show that it's good to reward customers with discount or with goods, or you name it. The problem with these rewards towards customers is that basically it only works with your company. So the attractiveness of the reward that you are giving to the customer is limited. What if your reward process could be entangled with the reward process of a different company, or many companies, or a franchise? And that's actually what Loyal does. Basically, you can issue your reward system. You can tie your reward system with a network of other agents. I mean, I don't know. You are producing again chairs, and you want to give like a 3% discount to your customer to buy another chairs. But I mean, that 3%, what should I be doing, is not really interesting to me. Yeah, but you can maybe making an agreement with Carrefour, for instance. So the 3% that you give to that customer can also be spent or used on Carrefour products. Okay, so you have synergy. Carrefour has an interest because it can get new clients. You have an interest because the reward that you are doing really make your client loyal to you, and so far and so on. So this is the general idea of Loyal, and it's based actually on blockchain, because the transaction has to be immutable and the transaction has to be verifiable. And this is a very interesting type of application. It's just one of the many applications for customer loyalty program management. And of course, one specific aspect of this Loyal is that consumer privacy is quite important. You don't want the data of your consumers go public. This is a problem because if you want to expand your business, also there are different privacy regulations depending on the country you're working on. This Loyal takes care of it. You just use it as an over-the-top solution, and that's it. So GemOS, basically, and in particular Gem Health, is a specific blockchain which has been set for the transfer of medical records. Medical records is a nightmare in many contexts for a very simple reason. There are a lot of restriction in having those data flowing around. This is very reasonable because it's very private. You can disclose your illness, okay, disclose your mental status, and so on and so on. So are protected under every legislation. However, the transfer of medical record is extremely important. For instance, I'm outside of Qatar, I need like an hospitalization, and then the insurance need to access my data. How this data is transferred? What are the guarantee about the privacy, the security of those data? Well, basically, nowadays is a nightmare. But if your solution is based on a sort of controlled blockchain, permissioned blockchain, like the one of Gem Health, is it possible to have a seamless transfer of your medical data also to your doctor in Qatar that can consult with the doctor in Italy, for instance, where I come from? And this way you have ease of access to your health records for the doctors that need to access those records, plus also the insurance can have access to your record for a smoothless liquidation of whatever amount is needed, even for paying the cares that you received in a different country. So this is another thing that you can use over the top. Wave is also quite interesting. It's a solution for dematerializing documents. So you go basically paperless. And this is actually what the government of the United Arab Emirates has done last year. The government is paperless. And how did they do that? Well, basically with a blockchain solution. Every document that is generated by an administration is put in the blockchain. There are rules that control who can access the document, who can send the document, who can read the document, who can append to the document. And this way, everything is basically presented at 0 time to the table of the decision makers, and in a way that is, again, secure and confidential. Think about the application of this wave to financial transaction. Okay, it's very good, because nowadays what you do, you probably generate an invoice in your office, then you scan the invoice, and the invoice is received in the email of a secretary somewhere. Then the secretary takes your email, goes to finance, and say, yeah, we should pay this. Come on, this is really, I will not say prehistoric, but it's completely different from what you could do now in a much more efficient way. You generate invoice locally, automatically invoice is transferred to the financial department of your client that will proceed with the payment if you don't go for a smart contract. So this digitalization of documents is one of the first things I will do if I were like the CEO of an SME, in order to speed up the process, even the decision process within the company. Another point, which is a real world solution, is Align Commerce. Is one of the many solutions that you can use for cross-border payments. Again, cross-border payments managed through blockchain translates in removal of the intermediation. So this translates in reduced fees. This translates in fast execution, in a transparent record of everything, and in a seal of security that you probably cannot even have with the process that you're going over around at this very time. Factor harmony is something interesting now. It's something interesting. It's developed on it's a blockchain of blockchain, basically. Okay, you want to build your own blockchain. You don't need to start from scratch. You don't need to let's say, to get crazy in order to see how can I implement a blockchain. You can use one of these blockchain of blockchains that enables you to leverage a blockchain. This one in particular is based on Bitcoin. If you cannot use that one on Bitcoin, there are others, even for free, of course, with less features. But there is this idea of blockchain that is quite important. So in conclusion, so I would like to leave floor for like a discussion. I have to say that it has never been a better moment for being the CEO of a small and medium enterprise, for a very single reason. There are opportunities there that there were not in the past. So if you are like fast enough to get those opportunities, you can really move your company to the next layer, to the next step, to the big game. And those steps that you have to take is to embrace digital transformation, first of all. Dematerialize your processes. The most that you can do is to dematerialize the most, and possibly put those processes in a framework of secure management, which is something that basically blockchain provides you. Then we can discuss about what would be the best segment of your business to get digitalized first. We can discuss what is the best solution for electronic payments and so far and so on. But that's okay. It's a sort of details that have to be discussed and decided once you have taken the decisions. And I believe that this series of webinars, yesterday there was cloud, today is on blockchain, are quite relevant, because if you're able to see the possibilities of technology and you're able to put that in practice, and that's where entrepreneurs like you are needed, you really can make the big jump, because never like in this moment, there have been opportunities for companies. So I would like to thank you very much. This is the website of our laboratory, where there is a lot of resources in terms of scientific research. And this is also my mail. So if there is any question, I really would like to discuss with you about what are your thoughts or what we've been discussing up to now. Thank you. I see question and answer. Okay.
Dr. Roberto?
Yes.
Yes, can you repeat that?
I hope so.
Sorry?
Can you repeat what?
Yeah, the last part, please. It wasn't clear. You were cutting off.
Yeah, I need to drink a bit. So as I said before, I don't know from which point I was cut off by internet, is that as a company, SME, you need to embrace the digital revolution. And the main concept I would like to transfer to you is that as an SME, there has never been like a good moment like this for doing business, for a very simple reason. The business now is at the age of a transformation. If you go for digitalization, you can really bring your business to the next level. So this means you can really increase your revenues. You can really multiply by 10 or 100 or even 1,000 or more your customers, and you can really go far. You can have your company thrive and move into the big game. In order to do this, you need to go for digitalization, the digitalization of your processes in a framework of security. This framework is good, is provided. There are several solutions, but one of the solutions that is very hot and it's proving very good is going through blockchain. As we have seen, also blockchain provides you the capability of accessing funding, of having fast processing time, of having identity management, and so far and so on. There are many possible implementation and features of blockchain. So first thing is to decide to go for digitalization or not. If not, I believe there will be difficult time ahead. Once you decide for digitalization, you need to do like an assessment of what sector you want to digitalize first, and the ones that you should digitalize are the ones that are like providing the more value to the company. And then you start thinking about what are the technologies that you need to adopt. We discussed a few cuts of the shell technology that you can take and implement. You can also think better about your needs and selecting the specific technology, that will address also your needs. This is the website of my laboratory, the CRELab. This is also my mail. If you're like curious about something, please let me know. And I would like to leave the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberto. If you can just put the slide with your email address just for the attendees, if they would like to contact you further.
Yeah, that's my mail.
Yes. No, Doctor, we are just seeing the, if you can just, it's on the preview, if you can, yes, thank you so much. Yes, so Dr. Roberto, we received a couple of questions for your session.
Yep.
As more users use blockchain, is there a limit to the capacity of blockchain networks that you have mentioned? And how will these limits, how will they be addressed?
Yeah, it's basically there are solutions that are designed for scaling, like Algorand is a blockchain technology that can support tens of thousands of transactions per second. So those are the type of limits that I would say for an SME are basically very far to reach limits. But yeah, of course, there are theoretical limits, but advancement in the field are extraordinary, exponential. So I would say that for an SME, with tens of thousands of transactions per second, you should be okay. If more like transaction power is needed, you can go for some specialized solution. But I would say that this is not basically a limitation for an SME.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Roberto. One more question. Regarding the smart contract, when you enforce penalty, when do you enforce penalties, or when is the contract delivered properly? Does the fund transfer has to be from the blockchain as well, or can it be linked to a bank account?
At this moment is within the blockchain, of course, but of course it can be linked to a bank account if a bank offers the API, the application program interface, to interact with blockchain. So if a bank decides, and if I were a bank, I would go for it, because this means continue surviving. If the bank is on the blockchain, yes, also the bank, you can send the contract. With this contract, I order my bank to move this amount of money from this bank account, which is my account, to this other bank account, which is the bank account of the other guy. So it's perfectly possible in principle. At this very moment, everything is in the blockchain, but it will be in the bank account. But still, it's possible also for some blockchain like Ethereum or Bitcoin, then to cash out. This means moving the money out of the blockchain, but it requires a further step. But in the future, I'm sure it will be also directly the bank involved in this process.
Thank you, Dr. Roberto. We're still open to receive any questions from our audience, please.
Yeah, I see there's one. Since Bitcoin is illegal in Qatar, can the full power of blockchain application be realized? Yes, because basically the Bitcoin is one application of the blockchain, full stop. As I said before, you can have a blockchain for checking the status of a shipment. I mean, the mango coming from India, are they rotten or not? You can put this information on blockchain. So it's completely, a blockchain is completely disconnected from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an application of blockchain. So you can come up with the applications you want for blockchain. There is no need to be based on Bitcoin. It's completely detached. It's just an application. Bitcoin is an application of blockchain. So yeah, there is one question, which is a good one. Basically, we still need the bank's approval at the current time, otherwise the transaction has to be done using cryptocurrency. Yes, it's true. It is like that. But still, there are like blockchain systems that are basically self-sustained ecosystems. Because if you're in a given blockchain and you start trading within that blockchain with smart contracts, you reduce a lot your dependency on the bank itself. And then,
so is it secured, Dr. Roberto, from cyber attack?
Yeah, blockchains are normal one, standard one, the one that you can take also from open source project. As I said, is a strength in number. So their strength is coming from the math that is behind. So to the state of the art, blockchain are very secure. There are threats that are coming from quantum computing, but there are also already solutions proposed for blockchain that will survive the arrival of a quantum computer. So they are probably the most secure things that you have around.
Dr. Roberto, we received a question, but I'm not sure if it's our role to answer, but they just wanted to understand, why do you think it's illegal in Qatar?
Oh, it's I mean, it's very reasonable, because every state has the right, and this is worldwide, has the right to mint its own coin. If you use a cryptocurrency, basically you are eroding the right of the state to mint coin, because it's someone else also that is producing coin. So from this point of view, it's perfectly logical that a state could ban the usage of cryptocurrency, simply because it's an erosion of the mint rights that every state has. Very simple.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Roberto. I'm not sure if we still have any more questions. We're just receiving some feedback, Dr. Roberto, and I'm sure that our audience can communicate with you and our other professors anytime through your email addresses. So for the time being, Dr. Roberto, Dr. Mohammed, Dr. Nuruddin, I would like to thank you for the great session we ran today, and for the attendees who have supported us throughout the journey and our digital forum today and yesterday. I would like to thank Hamad bin Khalifa University and Dr. Munir and the College of Science for the collaboration with the Ministry of Transport and Communication. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. It was a pleasure having you today. And I'm sure that we have perfectly delivered the importance of the digital transformation and the benefits that the SMEs will get out of it to continue running their business with any circumstances that we're going through. And thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And looking forward for collaborating. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Roberto. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And thank you, Dr. Noordin.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
You too. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.